Hello, everybody. Richard E. Gordon, CEO Dojo. Welcome to another session of Solving the Puzzle, one piece at a time. Today, I have the distinct pleasure of a true gentleman, true American hero, truly good, humble man. That's always important in life, is to be humble with all your successes. So today, we're going to be talking about the topic that I've been bringing up: knowledge is power. Very powerful. Everyone knows knowledge. Today, you can get anything at your fingertips. You can go online and get a Harvard degree. You can learn how to do surgery and remove an appendix online. But the question becomes, is knowledge enough? So without further ado, my very special guest, Kenneth Bigbee Jr. Kenny, tell us a little bit about yourself. Don't be shy.
Thank you. Obviously, a pleasure to be here. Super thankful to be here with you. It's an honor. And for all the people that follow you and on your team. I was obviously a former Navy SEAL, and some of my most recent incursions, obviously I'm a martial artist. We just swam the Hudson not too long ago to raise over $250,000 for homeless vets in New York. And that was seen on Fox and Friends. Just doing things to what we call be elite. And by be elite, that mantra means become your best self. Mm-hmm. You don't have to be the best, but you can't fail to be your best. So that is in essence, what our team believes. So aim to be your best. Now, if you want to be the best, the formula is the same. You have to just aim to be your best. So the walk of life is the same regardless. You want to just aim to be your best, whether you want to be the best or just have a better quality of life. Essentially, what I like to say that I do is I like to train people to have peak performance under pressure. So you have some people that perform. So out of say 100 people, you have maybe 50% that will actually perform. Then maybe you'll have about 10% that do peak performance. And then maybe you'll have 1 to 2% that have peak performance under pressure. And times like these are times of pressure. So you have the few people that will stand out under pressure. And that's what Navy SEALs are experts in, is peak performance, being your best on the very worst day. And that's what separates people with just knowledge or people that actually execute with that knowledge when it counts, as you suggested.
And that's pretty amazing. You know, again, and you definitely understand being in that peak zone. And just one quick thing I'll throw up there before we get into the question. And again, you shared this with me the last time we spoke, and the facts stuck with me. Talk about peak. And again, you're humble about it. And I researched it, and I became even more impressed. I'm always impressed with you. Anyway, you can share more. We know the numbers, but we don't look at them. How many men of color are Navy SEALs?
That's a good question. I would be the 32nd African-American Navy SEAL in world history. David Goggins, who I just recently had the great fortune to have him include me in his book about our story and becoming Navy SEALs. He's 36, and that hit a New York Times bestseller. And he kind of told the story of what we had to face. He had the great Carl Brashear from, I don't know if what was that movie with Cuba Gooding Jr.?
Yeah, I remember the movie.
The Navy divers. Called the actual man in that movie, called Goggins to support him through that time when we were going through training. It was in the San Diego Times, and they were discussing why there are not enough minorities in the SEAL team. So I'm 32. David Goggins, who is leading the world with his inspiration, he's 36. So there's very few. You have literally a 2% chance as an African-American in becoming a Navy SEAL.
And that's pretty amazing, because again, you look at the Navy SEALs, there's no doubt they're the best in the world. It's a very difficult training to get through. And the thing I read, and you can convey on that too, it helped me get a little insight, because they were saying that once you get there, your qualifications are what get you through the training. So it doesn't matter if you come from here, there, or anywhere. If you got what it takes to make it through that grueling training, which knocks people out from the start. But again, so you're looking at a very small percentage of people that make it through the training, and then a very small percentage of people within a specific area to make it through. And I read the studies. And so, again, this is for my own knowledge. I'm always seeking out. So we're saying that a lot of the cultural things, and I read the information from Cognitive there. And so some of the information he was saying is that there's just not the opportunities to have these skill sets growing up. And that's in a lot of things. You know, the Williams sisters have proved that with tennis and proved that with golf with Tiger Woods. So there's just not the advantage to get trained in the skills that someone else might get growing up. Do you see that to be the case?
Very true. That was the case with me. Another good friend of mine is Remy. Remy actually he does the choreography for Michael Bay in Transformers. And Remy didn't know how to swim correctly. And Remy's another African-American Navy SEAL. His family came from Africa, and he was in the Bronx and was on the streets, and he didn't know how to swim properly. I didn't know how to swim great either. Like literally, I didn't know how to do the stroke that you had to pass with. Right. So the education and the requirements to make it through are not available, or culturally, they don't participate in it. So it's not the norm in that culture. So they're just not exposed. I didn't know how to shoot properly, all kind of stuff, which were requirements to swim with fins. I didn't know how to do that. So all those prereqs that may be of normalcy in other cultures or economic conditions are not normal for those people, and they don't seek that opportunity.
And that's, again, pretty amazing. That's why I bring that up, because again, from my knowledge and everybody else's knowledge out there, that's amazing commitment on your part to be in that small percentage. You talk about the elite, that puts you in that elite category, and I always commend you for that. Like I said, I know you're humble about it, but it's definitely something that you need to share what you do when you train people, to say, hey, if you put it there, you can go there. And then that takes us to the question, which we'll expound upon a lot of this. Knowledge is power. We all agree with that. Do you think it's enough to be successfully in business and personally, and more importantly, with my rounded viewpoint, just as yours, to be happy? So is knowledge enough, or do we need more?
That's a brilliant question. I literally was in a conversation with a teammate at one of our affiliates for our martial arts academies, and there was a challenge with one of the teammates, and I said, I'm with you in being helpful to the weak. There's kind of 3 levels in being helpful for the weak, referring back to your questions, or dealing with people that have less opportunity or less ability. I said, so 1, you can be helpful for the weak. Number 2, you in elite environments, sometimes they weed out the weak, the Spartans, the Navy SEALs, and in some instances, you don't want the weak there, okay? And then I said, then there's one other way. He said, what's that? And I said, that is helping the entitled. And he said, well, what do you mean? I said, there's a difference between helpless and entitled. And the difference is entitled is when you want attention and authority without accountability. So is knowledge enough? No, you need accountability. And then you want respect without risk and without responsibility. So entitled, when we say somebody's entitled, he said, yeah, I've never heard it articulated like that. Well, when somebody's entitled, they want attention, they want authority with no accountability. They want respect with no responsibility and risk. And if you look at those things, knowledge in itself that can just be memory. Mm-hmm. Understanding is when memory specifically is applied to you in your situation. And wisdom is pretty much how to execute the knowledge. So if we look at somebody that's entitled, it would seem to suggest that when you're entitled, you don't execute. All those things that I described, accountability is an actionable thing. It's not just knowledge, which is a rote thing, a memory thing. Mm-hmm. Accountability is actionable. You have to be actionable to be accountable. Something has to be occurring. You have to be applying yourself to something. Responsibility, risk, those are actionable. They are not just memorization. Knowledge is not enough. We need it to be actionable in order to incur a result. We need it to both be relevant to ourselves and actionable.
That is awesome. I love the way you phrased all that, and I love your perspective, because it's the same way I look at it, but I like the way you packaged it. And what I was looking at is a couple of things you said, and I look at, again, and just like we talked prior, is coming back to the accountability. I'm a big fan of teachers. I love teachers. I love our school system. I love education. But I think from my professional observations, I taught in the school, memorization is a key to get you through the system with good grades. And so it is missing that piece, the exact piece that you were talking about. So how do you see going forward and making people not be regurgitators of facts, but be able to, like you say, put them into action, not just memorize fact, which is good at parties and entertains your friends and families. And, you can name a World War II battleship, that is all cool. So we're not dismissing that. That's fun. And we all like to play that game. So how do you see, as a society, we transition? And I think we're in a transition now because the schools have been shut down. It's been homeschool online. So I think people are beginning, the wheels are turning. So how do you see going from the memorization to the accountability comes in there, the action comes in there, and not just spitting out facts? So how do you see a progression?
That's a brilliant question. And there was a yogi, there's a famous yogi, and he made a great point. He said it used to be impressive to have knowledge, to be the guy that knows everything at the party or can have a political debate on knowledge based upon all that he knew. And he said, but now there's this wonderful lady or thing called Google, and it knows more than you could ever know. You can ask the temperature in Wuhan, China, and it knows, and you don't know it. You could ask the date of anything. He said, so now knowledge is not impressive because the Google can respond to that. So what is impressive now? How do we go forward? Knowledge is not impressive anymore. And when we teach jujitsu, I like to point out that I put it this way. When you teach jujitsu, it's taught, you learn all these techniques, and then it takes like 10 years to get a black belt. And what I like to express to the team is, I say, imitation is the lowest level of learning. Innovation is the highest level of learning. So what is imitation? Imitation is a technique, okay? So, you have to learn techniques, okay? So what is a technique? A technique is a very specific response to an exact situation. So when in life does the exact thing happen as planned? Very rarely. In the tactical world, they say no plan survives first contact with the enemy. All your plans go out the window. Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan. Was it Mike that said that? Till you get hit in the face. So all that knowledge kind of goes out the window in jiu-jitsu. You learn all these techniques, and then when you fight, you can't remember any of them when you're in the heat of battle. This is the reality of life. So a technique is a very specific response to a specific instance. And that instance rarely ever happens. So what's more important, to memorize technique or to understand concepts? Mm-hmm. So concepts are amenable. They're adaptable. A concept is an idea. So the Prussians were very good. We'll look back at history to answer your question. The Prussians were great at going forward with following instructions and executing those instructions. They were renowned for that, and they got really far. Nobody could beat them. You got a guy like Napoleon who came along and he says, here are the tools, here's the objective, find a way to get it done. Now, when you had first contact with the enemy, okay, and things fell apart, the Prussians could no longer execute because all they could do was follow the instructions or the memorized calls, commands, battle plans that they were given. But Napoleon's guys were able to adapt and innovate and overcome. So and our school system, like you pointed out, is literally based on the Prussian school of thought. So you're taught to go to school, memorize all this stuff, fall in line, and then execute those instructions. And that was built for the industrial era where you just plug and played into a system where you just did exactly what you're told. But in today's times, and that's actually relatively a new concept in humanity. Before that, your last name was based upon a skill that you had. You didn't just plug and play in society. Your name was Baker because you could cook, etc. The Industrial Revolution came along, and they infused that Prussian school of thought so that you could go work in a factory. Well, times are changing now. Now you have business owners that are like YouTubers and things like that. So now we're going back to this place where you have to innovate. You can't just follow instructions. The whole world is changing. So what I like to say to sum all that up in looking at big picture to make it short, simple, and sweet, when I'm teaching tactical courses, I say, don't be right, be relevant. So knowledge can be right, black and white, right or wrong, this or that, fact or not. It's digital, it's binary. But life is kind of analog. It's adaptive and changing. So sometimes you can be right, but you're not relevant. So I learned this specific memorized technique, and now the enemy or life, like Corona, does something totally different that you've never seen before. Well, when that happens and you don't understand the concept, an idea, if you don't have the tools and know the end objective and you just execute what you memorize, it's no longer relevant. It doesn't solve the problem. So in essence, how do we go forward? We teach relevance. So what is relevance? Rather than memorize, we teach critical thinking. Rather than just learn techniques, we teach problem solving. So what is martial arts? Martial arts is problem solving. It is not a bunch of techniques. What we did was, like Bruce Lee said, we kind of froze in time this guy's resolution to a problem. What we need to capture is his mindset of problem solving, not the very specific thing he did to solve a problem, because life, viruses adapt, as we've discovered. That's just what they do. That's the nature. They want to survive too. Bacteria adapts, the enemy adapts, the economy's changing. The only constant is change. Therefore, you can't learn a technique because it's not relevant in just a little bit of time. What we need to learn is to have critical thinking and problem solving and give people the tools and teach them how to use their minds to get there.
Awesome. And that's an awesome answer to that question on the fly. So love to see the way your brain thinks and the way you tie it together, because yeah, that's all relevant. And what I see and hear out of everything you're saying, which always brings me back. So same thing when I work with people and I work with clients and customers, is I look at the goal setting, because people, like you're saying and all this, they don't know how to set a goal, and then people get all confused about being very specific. So it's like you're saying, the goal is specific, but it's floating. Example is if someone might tell me, I'm going to go on a trip, and it's like, okay, where are you going? And then they think, well, I don't know, so I don't have a goal. Well, you do have a goal. Your goal is to spend, and you've done this before, my goal is to go to Thailand and spend a month there. And then I'll go where I go, and I'll sleep where I sleep, and I train where I train. So your plan is to go to Thailand, do some training. That's your ultimate goal. And then the critical thinking comes in, because then when you get there, you have an opportunity, you can clean and sleep. So your goal is very specific, but it's also very dynamic, which people don't get. It's like, hey, I'm going to go see Kenny in Indiana, but I'm not going to fly. I'm going to drive, and I'm going to go to Kansas City, and I'm going to go to the Grand Canyon, but my goal doesn't change. So people get confused when you say, well, I thought you were going to go see Kenny. It's like, I am. That's the goal. But that doesn't mean I can't go to the Grand Canyon with my family first, or it doesn't mean I can't go to the zoo. So in your mind, is the goal the important thing, and how do you see the goal and goal setting?
That's a brilliant question. Man, you asked really great questions. I think that a goal is very important. It's a destination of which you will never arrive. It's in the human nature, once you achieve something, to want to improve. And as a matter of fact, when you're not reaching for something, you kind of die inside. So to constantly improve is an important thing, because you're your mindset, your soul will like die if you're not reaching to become better. And that's what we say, become your best self, because it's in our natures to always be getting better. Now, that is different from being content, at peace with the current situation. So you need to accept what is, but you always need to be looking to improve. You need that kind of yin and yang balance, because if you're not content, then you won't have you won't be the eye of the storm. So you need to have both the storm that's making a whirlwind, that's making way, but you also need to have that calm mindset in the middle of that, where you're content and accepting of what is. So the goal is important in constantly improving and being alive. So there's a difference from being biologically living and being alive. Alive is more of a state of mindset or of the soul. So you can be living, and you kind of biologically living when you don't have goals. Your heart's beating, you know what I mean? You got a pulse, you're breathing, but your soul and your mindset don't have anything to be passionate and engaged in life with. So the goal helps you to be alive and constantly improves yourself and the environment and quality of life of the people around you. So it doesn't just impact you. Like we say in the SEAL teams, there is no I in team. So I think that a goal is hugely imperative. And to another point that you made, what I like to say is, you fail until you succeed. So Winston Churchill said, success is going from failure to failure without losing enthusiasm. So why do we talk about that? That's that same thing, the eye of the storm. You have to be at peace with where you're at, and you have to continue to try to go forward. So why is that important? Because here's your goal. You never give up the goal. But the reality is you're going to fail and fail and fail and fail and then get there. So you never give up the goal, but you always change the plan until you make it. And the key word is until. So like you most brilliantly suggested, you don't change the goal. Here's my goal. Do I fly? I am going to see Kenny, you said, or do I drive? Okay. The goal doesn't, you don't give that up, but you do change. So you will fail. Well, do you give up when you fail? No, you change the plan, but you don't give up the goal. So in the SEAL teams, we call that contingency planning. And what people don't realize, we may have 9 or 10 contingency plans per mission. So in that insinuates, or that implies that we understand that you must fail until you succeed. So Navy SEALs are hugely successful at things, like you said, is knowledge enough? No, we go out and execute. But one of the reasons that we're so great at executing is because we realize that you will fail until you succeed. And don't change the end game. We have a saying in the SEAL teams, always complete the mission, never fail the mission. Okay? Now, but we have contingency plans. Well, that's for all the failures that could impede us, where most people would stop, but we're going to complete them. So we change that from plan A, plan B, plan C, until we complete that mission, like you suggested.
Yeah, and I love using in the security world. I train lots of security, and I love using the word disengage. You know, because people look at fail, and I'm like, your plan has to have a disengage. There are times you just disengage. You know, you can call it turning and running. You can use, but it truly is, it's a plan to disengage. And again, psychologically, it makes more sense. But that's what you have to do sometimes. Sometimes you have to disengage, regroup, and then take another approach. So, you know, definitely the way you look at it. And what you tie into this is a great point. That the next thing I want to ask you about is experience. You know, you touched on this a lot. And what I look at as experience is twofold. There's the book knowledge, the education knowledge, the ivory walls knowledge. And then also there's the more important one to me, because it brings the puzzle together, talking about the puzzle, is the internal knowledge. Born with it, we develop it. It's instilled in us by our parents, by our community. It's our instincts, where the hair on our arms stand up, where we just get the tingle in our body. And you, again, using you as the example with the high level things, you definitely brought an internal knowledge to this, because there are a lot of people that went through that were expert shots, could swim like a fish. They were used to living off the land. You know, they could live off berries and make fires out of hay. And so they have that now. But you came in with this kind of survival instinct knowledge that said, hey, I'm going to do whatever it takes. So experience and then the internal knowledge. How do you see that playing out?
That's really, man, like I said, I love your questions. They're super insightful. You have like a Socratic thing going on there. So Socrates was a brilliant philosopher, but he awoke that in you, and it's your questions speak to your brilliance. Like we pointed out before, I had suggested that there's kind of three forms of knowledge. So there's knowledge, understanding, and wisdom, and we're moving through those phases. So knowledge is just that. It's binary. It's just factual, something you can memorize. Okay. Understanding is when we start to get into relevance. How does that knowledge apply to me, to my situation, to my team? So that's understanding. So we move from just factual observation of the environment, okay, or what you've been told to do, or what you can call just the what and the how, okay? So now, how has that become relevant? Now we move into relevancy, okay? How does that knowledge apply to me and my situation? Then we move into wisdom, which is the application. You can't be wise if you just have knowledge. Wisdom is when you relevantly, so then there's relevance, so there's knowledge, okay, in this situation, it's relevant in this factor, and then wisdom is, how do I apply that relevantly? Wisdom is actionable. Wisdom is not just memorized, it's not just static. Wisdom is actionable. Understanding is the spark to that actionability. So in what you're asking is experience, and it's been put in a great way. Experience, essentially, you do a whole lot wrong until you learn how to do it right. We kind of go back to that. So some people say, oh yeah, you'll just succeed. That's not how it goes. A baby falls down 1,000,000 times. I think it was the great Jim Rohn. He said, you don't tell the baby, just give it up, just stop walking, right? He's gonna keep trying until, so that experience, like Winston Churchill suggested, getting it wrong over and over until you get it right, changing your plans until you arrive, that gives you understanding, and then that gives you wisdom, because now you know how that applies to you, and now you know how to execute that in relationship to a lot of different scenarios. So somebody that's brand new, and then somebody that has a lot of failures, of which they now know somebody's about to go this way, go, no, don't go that way, let's go this way. The experience of failing so much and then eventually continue, you didn't give up, you disengaged and then re-engaged, like you suggested, I love that, allowed you to now have the experience of what to do and also what not to do. In the jiu-jitsu community, we like to say, you don't lose if you learn. You don't lose if you learn. So you don't lose, you learn. So I failed, then I learned. And each time you learn, you actually get closer to the goal. So each time you fail, you get closer to the goal. So experience is the accumulation of a bunch of failures that taught you what to do and what not to do and how to get it right. That's the process of, that's essentially what experience is. So experience is relevance of how to apply the knowledge to make it happen. And I think in jiu-jitsu, what's great about the martial arts is in jiu-jitsu, you can learn a technique all day. Then you hit the mat and it didn't go like that. You have to roll. When you roll, you're like, that didn't play out like I planned. The experience of actually having live challenges and resistance, knowledge is not effective until you put it up against live challenges and problems and active resistance. Then knowledge comes alive. So knowledge is like living, and then wisdom is like being alive. So that is, and what is the difference? In epigenetics, they talk about, they used to think that DNA itself was life. And then they've discovered that that is not life. They discovered that movement is life. The DNA is just, it's kind of like the raw materials that are the blueprint to set up the elements in the cell. Well, okay, they took out the nucleus and the DNA of the cell, and the cell stayed alive for like 2 months. Well, why is that? Because it kept moving and kept doing those functional activities. So movement is life, action is life. And there's knowledge, which is static. There's understanding, which is relevant, it's waking up. And then there's wisdom. And wisdom is experience, essentially, what to do and what not to do, which you've learned from doing it wrong a million times and not giving up and arriving at the goal.
I love the way you phrase that experience. And so, yeah, is relevant, and that comes across in all that you're saying. And that leads me, again, you're leading me down this wonderful path. So the next point is, in every world, whether it's the military, martial arts, corporate world, and again, love lieutenants, love them to death. We all love lieutenants, but they start out with this knowledge. They come out of the academy, West Point, and they have the knowledge, and they don't want to know nothing. They don't want to hear nothing. They don't want to hear that warrant officer, that gunny sergeant. They don't want to hear from nobody. And it's the same thing in the corporate world. You got like that first tier executive, and they've been through the training course and management training and company, and they're full speed ahead. So it's the same in all worlds. The same thing in the martial arts world. They say there's nothing more dangerous than a yellow belt or kind of the first tier in any martial art, because they got enough knowledge to be dangerous. So with that said, again, not bashing anybody, but just making the observation that sometimes people get to that level of knowledge where they become closed off, the ego sets in, and they almost become dangerous. And they can be dangerous if left unchecked. So with that point, and you talk about this, is the wisdom. How do you feel mentors, guides, and just people who are going to help you on your path? Do you think we ever get to a point where we're good? Like we don't need to have a mentor or someone guide us to the next level?
Man, again, brilliance in that question. And that goes back to the conversation I was having when we were having a challenge with the teammate. And I clarified to my friend, I said, I'm with you on being helpful to the helpless, but I'm not with you on being helpful to the entitled in principle. I can't support that. And what's the difference? I said, well, we talked about in being entitled, wanting authority without accountability. Okay, so what is accountability? Well, accountability requires authority. So what is an authority? Authority is somebody that there's a standard of any standard, constant improvement, or there's a bar that's set, and that authority comes through and says, hey, you're not on the right path, go this way. It holds you to that standard. So the authority holds you accountable to reaching the standard and aiming. And an entitled mindset would say, no, I'm good. I'm good where I'm at. And an entitled mindset doesn't want a mentor, doesn't want an authority, doesn't holds them accountable, because that's what a mentor and an authority is going to do. It's going to hold you accountable to becoming your best. That's what they're going to do. And as soon as you stop aiming to become your best, then you've become entitled. You become complacent. Okay, different than contentment. Complacent means that you've accepted everything as it is and you're not moving forward to be better. That's complacent. Contentment is when you're at peace and accept what is, but you're still aiming to move forward. So I think when we essentially, like the cell that we discovered, when the movement stopped, they took the nucleus out. So the nucleus essentially repairs the DNA, repairs those what they call IMPs, integral membrane proteins, the moving parts that let stuff in and out of the cell, the respiration, the digestion. You got to have stuff going on, actionability, or the cell dies. Well, when you took that nucleus out that had the DNA, eventually those parts break down. Now what happens? Eventually when they break down, it can't work anymore. It can't move anymore. So when movement stops, then things die. Therefore, when you become complacent, when you don't try to move forward, when you don't try to grow, things die. Organizations die. People die. Retire and don't have anything to aim for, statistically, they die. So that's not an opinion. They found that to be true. Correct. So you need a mentor to hold you accountable. Why? Most people hate authority. You hate authority. There's two times you hate authority. Mentors, okay? Bosses, okay? Leaders, okay? There's two times you hate it. When you're entitled because you're complacent, or you have an improper authority, because an authority also is accountable. His accountability is to improve the quality of the team, of the people. So he's accountable. So you will not, if you're a genuinely accountable person, you won't like an authority that is telling you what to do but doesn't have the best interest of the team. But if you also are a person who's entitled, you won't like an authority that does have your best interest but is trying to get you to grow. So if you become complacent, you die, you perish, both in spirit, your body too. If you don't exercise, your body will break down. When you stop moving, when you lay bedridden in the hospital, you start to get ailments. That's why they turn you and move you. When everything stops, you die. So I think a mentor is totally needed, a leadership. It doesn't matter how long you've been in the game. If you stop going forward, you cease to exist.
And well stated. And piggybacking on that, important point is knowledge is constantly changing. So if people think they're there and they think they've got the knowledge and they think they got all the answers to whatever business or corporation, or if you're an entrepreneur, you have to realize that knowledge is going to constantly be changing. And a lot of companies, and even now, people are going out of business because they didn't see changes. Toys R Us, unfortunately, is a famous story. I love Toys R Us. And unfortunately, they didn't change. They didn't see the times coming.
So true.
They didn't pivot. And so there's other companies as well that are not pivoting. So do you think that knowledge is constantly changing and it's important to constantly stay abreast? And it doesn't mean, because people always, especially in the martial arts and the corporate world, people are like, well, we can't throw away tradition. And I'm a big believer in tradition, as I know you are. But that doesn't mean I look at it as drag. That doesn't mean we need to drag everything to the next level or to the 2020. I do an evaluation, what do I need to bring as far as my stuff, my baggage into 2020. And so, there are some traditions that are worthwhile to continue to maintain the integrity of yourself, the arts, your company. But do you think that the knowledge is changing and that you need to change with it?
Man, that it's so relevant to literally what we're experiencing, because in that conversation I said, hey man, my friend said, well, the teammate's doing the job now, so I'm happy with him. I said, that's what it appears on your end. And I said, that's because you're a beginner and that person has a lot more experience than you. I said, I'm looking years down the road for you. He said, what do you mean? I go, right now, you guys are beginners and the experience level of that teammate is here. And over time, you're going to improve. But if that person, of which our team is holding him accountable to constantly improve, when you guys catch up to him and he's not improving, not gaining new knowledge, not gaining relevant knowledge that's adapting, then you'll notice what's wrong. Then there'll be a problem because you'll catch up to him. You shouldn't catch up to him because he should be constantly improving. I should be constantly improving. So I have to go visit my teacher. And I'm his teacher, and he's got to be improved. It's got to be constant. And the other thing that I pointed out to him is I said, jiu-jitsu is not the same as jiu-jitsu was 50 years ago. The other challenge for your business, I said, is if the teammate doesn't improve, the jiu-jitsu, the knowledge is always changing. And over time, his knowledge will be archaic. And then nobody will want to come to your business because it's archaic knowledge. And you'll be left behind, and it will be shown, the proof and the evidence will happen when there's an actual exchange, and then they can't perform well. So I think in brilliance, what you said, it's always changing, and knowledge is changing. It may even be the same, and you talked about tradition. So going back to what is tradition? Tradition is like technique. A technique is very practical. But what's more important is to not just know the what and the how. The most important thing is to know the why. The why is what makes it relevant. The why is what lets you, like Bruce Lee said, take what's useful and throw out what's not. If you understand the why, like Napoleon said, here's the end objective. Here's a bunch of tools. Complete the end objective. So I can give you a hammer. So traditionally, we use a hammer. What is tradition? That we captured a moment in time where something was relevant. It was relevant in that moment in time. But at this moment in time, it's no longer relevant. So if you just do the what for the sake of doing the what that they did and you don't know the why, you can't adapt that tradition. Tradition shouldn't be something that's just stuck. Tradition, we did tradition because it was effective. So just like technique, if the technique's not working, it's time to change the technique. If the tradition is not working, it's time to change, to improve, to adapt and make relevant. Don't be right, be relevant. Even in relationships, don't argue to be right, argue to be relevant. If you're not listening, like we talked about right before we hopped on, I'm not listening. So I'm saying this because I know this is right. But if I listen, maybe I'll actually get new information and I can now make the relative movement for us to win as a team. So I think, like you said, we need to adjust. Knowledge is up. The environment's changing. Therefore, the application of knowledge is changing and the why is always changing. So the what and the how need to be taught after the why. And then we need to apply that constantly changing knowledge to that constantly changing why, and then we'll have relevancy, and traditions will adapt, techniques will adapt to gain us the end result of ourselves and our team becoming the best.
Yeah, very well stated. Again, taking that to the next level, people often think that the mentor or coach or guy that they picked has to be like the Mr. Miyagi kind of figure. That sits on the mountain. And that has its place and that has its relevance. And I think we've all, especially in the martial arts world, have had that Mr. Miyagi. But I have had many different ages and categories of mentors that I went to. Just quick example, when the computers came in the 90s, I'm running my school, life is good, I'm killing it. And then people start talking about the whole internet and web pages. And I'm like, I'm good. I'm good. I have one of my 9-year-old students comes in. He's like, hey, Master Gordon, you need a web page. I'm like, he sets it up and he showed me how to do it. So again, I'm going to him for guidance and coaching, and he's setting me up with the web page, and he's showing me, back then it was coding, and he's showing me how to code. And I'm like, I didn't disqualify him because he's 9. I didn't look to find a more experienced computer guy. He was able to help me and guide me for, like you said earlier, my specific needs. And I jumped on it. So do you think there's a set mentor type, or should you one be open to mentors that are going to help you regardless of the age, category, where they come from?
Again, extremely insightful question. One of the hallmarks to intelligence in psychology is you have personality archetypes. So one of the archetypical personality traits of an intelligent person is openness versus closeness. Mm-hmm. And again, that's about relevance. So if you're closed, you have this knowledge. Closeness says, I know what I know. Well, how can you, if you're not open, how can you receive new information to make a relative? So IQ is how can you adjust to something relevant to the environment? So if you're closed, how can you be relative? You can be right with what you know, but you can't be relative. So you are open in that situation, and that's what allows you to be amenable or adaptable. And is there a set type to a mentor? So here's one of the things that people don't know about Navy SEALs is that a lot of their background, like they'll go to race car driving school to learn how to drive. They'll go get with the best civilian shooters to learn how to shoot. So Navy SEALs are considered the tip of the spear, but they're considered the tip of the spear because they go around the world and get with other people that are great in their own right, that are not contract the elite of the elite. You follow what I'm saying? Sure. So cumulative experience of getting with other people that are better than themselves actually allowed them to be their best. And one of the other things is I changed in my martial arts academy. I literally was looking at our environment, and most martial arts schools have like 5 to 8 year olds and 8 to 14. And I changed it. There's still that basic parameter. But what is the presumption that's there subconsciously is that at this age, you normally have this capacity. And at this age, you normally have this capacity. Well, I changed it because in the SEAL teams, it's a performance-based environment. So a lot of times we get rank a lot quicker. And why is that? Because we take on a lot more responsibility much earlier. So what do I mean? You may have a 21-year-old that was a sniper that was in charge of Overwatch to make sure the president or some highly valued individual that has worldwide value makes it to the destination. Well, he's 21. It doesn't matter. So he will need the rank. Again, that rank is based on his responsibility and accountability level. Okay, what is rank for rank's sake? Rank is to let you be the authority. Well, what's the authority supposed to actually be doing? Making sure he's doing what's best for the team. We do it wrong in that we give rank because of knowledge, static knowledge, for just authority's sake, to be a boss versus a leader. I get to tell you what to do. We hate those bosses. We love the boss that has the actual end game of, I want the best for the team and I'll do whatever it takes for the best of the team. So we have this 21-year-old that has the best interest, who is accountable and who is responsible for this super valuable situation in person. Well, he needs to be able to have enough rank for people that don't necessarily understand rank according to accountability and responsibility. They just do it for leverage sake. So he's got to be able to go talk to an admiral. They said, well, why did you make this decision? Well, sir, I did it because X, Y, and Z. So you have a 21-year-old that may be talking to some people that have 30 years experience. And that's normal in a SEAL team. So we changed our environment to where the age doesn't matter. We just have beginner and advanced. So we may have a 6-year-old that's able to perform what the 12-year-old can do. Well, he should be in the advanced class. It doesn't matter his age. If you are accountable, you are responsible, and you are actionable and executing, you should be rewarded based on that. And we should be open. There's something called a meritocracy. A meritocracy is based on merit. So our structure is democratic, that everybody's voice matters, okay? There's a challenge with that. So there, in the SEAL teams is more meritocratic. What do I mean? Essentially, like you said, I'm the martial arts guru. Well, I need a house built and I don't know how to build the house. Well, I'm no longer the leader. I have to listen to the master carpenter. I need a web page built. In this instance, I am no longer the leader. I don't have the merit. Right. I don't have the competency to contribute. So a meritocracy is built off competency and contribution. So you can have competency and not be willing to contribute. It's hard to contribute when you don't have a competency. So in a meritocratic environment, your voice matters. You become the leader when you have the competency and the willingness to contribute. It doesn't matter your age. Like you said, that guy had the competency and he wanted to contribute. So now he's the leader in this situation because I don't have that competency. That is what determines leadership, not rank at all. So I think that, like you said brilliantly, you have to have an open mind. And what do you base that open mind on? Competency and willingness to contribute. It doesn't matter. And that is a performance because that allows them to perform what's best for the team. We need to move to a performance-based environment and have an open mind to competency and contribution, and whoever it is, they get to lead.
Awesome, and that's it keeps springboarding to the next. And almost 30 years ago, I followed the same path because it's when we started opening up the schools to the kids and families. And then, like you said, everybody was doing these 3 to 5-year-olds, 6 to 9-year-olds, 11 to 13. And the first second I saw it, I'm like, this is absurd. You know, again, I was always a rebel in essence. And again, not to be a rebel without a cause, but the rebel with a cause because I wanted to more effectively train. And what I observed at other people's schools, I definitely had the benefit of affiliates, is I observed for my knowledge sake, cerebral knowledge and in my heart, that when you put 5 and 6-year-olds in a room together with 20 of them, they're going to act like 5 and 6-year-olds. They have no higher measure, like you're saying, to aspire to. So I, even with my wisdom of martial arts, I'm only going to get these 5 and 6-year-olds to a certain level. So I did like you. I opened up the classes. So now I have a high school kid that this 6-year-old is looking to. I have parents that this 10-year-old is looking to. I have teenagers that these younger kids are looking to. So it stacked the deck where you raise the standard, and it came back to the same thing you spoke about early, is be your best. And what I looked at is the same version of what you're doing, is I look at when I train martial artists, when I counsel business owners and entrepreneurs, is be you for you. So that's where you come in as an individual, developing to be the best you can be and contributing to the bigger picture. So when
Mm-hmm.
you do that in a society, whether it's a martial arts class, military, corporate structure, you want to take everybody on your team and your company and in your business and develop their individual skills. Because not everybody's going to be a leader. I had a young instructor and I
Mm-hmm.
just did this knowledge session with him and he went on to great success. He couldn't teach a full class.
Mm.
And so I dialed it back a little bit. He was a high school kid and had the knowledge, but he couldn't teach a full class. So I kept dialing it back. And his expertise, and you've seen this, was 3 people max. He was
Mm.
the king of that small group. He was personable. He felt comfortable. He wasn't overwhelmed. He was natural. Because, when you get up in front of the room, you all of a sudden you become different. It became fake and it become very self-conscious. So I dialed it into his 3 and I had no problem. I didn't sell it like, gee, you're short because you can't do a full class. I'm like, you're the king of the small group. You're a valuable asset to me and these students. And so
Yeah.
with that, the question of, the be you for you, the be your best. So do you see that as the coach, as the mentor, you have to dial in individually to the person? Is that you feel your responsibility, or you just throw it out there and say, and again, going back unfairly to the school system, they just throw it out there and say, here's the math problem. This half gets it. That half doesn't. This half, it didn't even get up from their nap, but there it is.
Man, yeah, so very true. Definitely, man. That's an intelligent question in the fact that, again, we go back to that's a blanket issuing of knowledge. It's just a blanket statement. Okay, it's a broad brushstroke. All right, and in the SEAL teams there, and I'm referring to that because they have a record of achieving the most impossible things. So it's not about me saying, oh, well, the Navy SEALs are the best. Their record of performance is great. So we're not reinventing the wheel. We're taking and borrowing from people that have achieved what we're looking to achieve, mentorship in
Relevant
effect.
knowledge.
And yes, very much so. I love that. That's brilliant. So in the SEAL teams, they're not called the broad stroke performers. They're called we do a surgical strike. So that lends itself to what you're saying, this blanket broad stroke of delivery, of execution, of leadership. Okay, there's times for that. Okay, but when you want to be elite, when you want to be your best, you have to have a surgical approach, a relevant approach. Then we go back to right, not relevant. So now for your teammate, the whole classroom wasn't relevant to his competency and his ability to contribute. So in relevance, you go, well, if you want to be the right way to be a teacher is to be able to instruct the whole classroom. You didn't say that. You said, hey, you are great at this. This is relative to your competency and you're willing to contribute. It's all about relevancy. It's all about, like you said, being present and attention to detail. What we call situational awareness in the SEAL teams. You don't just execute for executing's sake. What is occurring and how can we apply relative to what we have, relative to what's to come, and relative to who's willing to contribute. So I think, like we said, going back to that, it is totally about relevancy, not a broad stroke, but a surgical, attentive, and relevant stroke.
Yeah, and this has been such an amazing chat. I love chatting with you because you, again, from my knowledge sake, you take what I already know and you take it to a new level and you give me new dialogue on how to express it. So I'm always open for that. And it's like, it's like candy. It's like, it's just an amazing thing. Because like, you're like me, you're a student of life and you're always looking, to pick up some new knowledge or new, even the phraseology, even the wording of it becomes so relevant. And that's what you talk about, the focus, the truly focuses in how you express yourself in the written word and the oral is almost like a lost art. And so I listen very carefully to the words people use, and you're a master at that, and again, that helps you to be effective in life and successful. So with all that we discussed, which is a lot, again, big ask, one point that you can leave our folks with on how they can use knowledge to be more successful in business, personal life, and then be happy. So just one point if you had to sum this up.
There's a great psychologist, and somebody had once asked me a similar question, and after the interview, I went back and thought, like, what's one thing that can make a difference? And really, two things came out of it. So I'll have to kind of put it into a two compartmentalization, but it'll be short and sweet. One thing is in the tactical world. You train how you fight, change your habits, change your life. So you train, however you train, that makes your habits. So you train, and then when you get under pressure, that's what's going to come out. You squeeze the fruit, that's what comes out. So how you train is how you fight. Well, what's the difference between training and the fight? The pressure. Now that you're actually under pressure and you can't think, whatever you did is going to come out. So you train how you fight. Change your habits, change your life. Number two, the other thing that came to mind is, and this comes from another great, brilliant mind, and that you fail until you succeed. Anything worth doing right is worth doing wrong until, and the key word there is until. Not the right or wrong, not the success, it is the until. Fail until you succeed. Anything worth doing right is worth doing wrong until you get it right. Those would be the most impactful points, I think, that would sum everything up. I think it's a three-pronged thing. Be relevant. Don't be right, be relevant. Anything worth doing right is worth doing wrong until you get it right. Keyword until. And the last one, you train how you fight, change your habits, change your life. And those are the habits that you want. Keep going until you get it right, and be relevant. Don't be right.
And that's pretty amazing to sum it up, because we've talked quite a bit, and there's like a lot more volumes we could write and talk about in regard to the knowledge. And I think that's why people go aground, is because there's so much knowledge and they go in so many different directions. But I think you summed it up. So I think that the training, in the essence of people, they don't always get the training is the knowledge. So you and I know what the training means: getting the knowledge, doing the do. So with the knowledge and the training is where you develop the habits. And then you have the knowledge. Because people ask me, oh, well, why do you run every day? Because I have the knowledge that it's the best for my life. It helps me be happy. So it's the knowledge. It's not that I do like running, but we all know not everybody loves running every day. Not everybody loves running every day. So there's no illusion there. It's just that it's the knowledge that habit is good for my health and my family.
Yes.
And then also the knowledge that failing is just a part of the process. So I think a lot of people are either taught wrong, or they think you look at failure as final, or they have it's the mindset shift. So the knowledge comes back to play, that they have to have the knowledge that they're gonna fail. And when I teach seminars, I say, if you haven't failed or you haven't run into any obstacles, be patient, because you will.
Yes. Yeah, and I like you said, I love talking to you, because it's like two hot coals, man. Sometimes you got a hot coal and then a cold coal, and this one will warm it up. You got two hot coals, man. They'll barbecue some stuff, man. That's some good cooking. Okay, and I always get to cooking when I'm with you, because you set me on fire. So I wanted to resend that commendation to you. And I think something important that you pointed out is that I asked people, I said, what's the only way you can fall down? They're like, what do you mean? I go, what's the only way you can fall down? I said, they were like, I don't understand. I said, the only way you can fall down is if you stood up, is if you stood for something. You can't fall unless you stood for something. So I said, there's a lot of people that would judge you because you fell. They have a lot to say. And the reason why they're judging you is because they're laying down. They haven't fallen because they're laying down. They're still laying down for life. They haven't stood. So the people that are, if you've stood, you have fallen, like that baby. You've tried to walk, you have fallen. And then as adults, we think that changes. Well, then you get on a bicycle and then you fall. You get in a car and then you wreck it. You get on a motorcycle and you're gonna lay it down. We think as adults, you're supposed to just succeed all of a sudden. No, you're gonna fail until you succeed. The same as a baby, it doesn't change. And the people that judge you, those people must not have, they must not have walked yet. They must not have tried to walk, because they would be understanding like, dude, I tried to walk and I fell. So they wouldn't judge you. They'd be trying to help you get back up. So if you stand for something, the only way you can fall, the only way you can fail is if you stand. And the people that are judging you are the people that are still laying down for life, not standing up in life.
Absolutely. And every successful person or organization or corporation or business has failed. And unfortunately, in the real world, the Navy SEALs, which are elite, there's no doubt about their statistics, but they fail. And unfortunately, it becomes a very global thing. You know, it's all over the news that they fail.
Yeah.
What kind of pressure in a job is that? You make a mistake and it's on the mat, literally on the global news, so that's failure right there. And in every sport, in every corporation, I use the one with Babe Ruth. Everybody knows that Babe Ruth has many records, the home run king. But what people don't often know is that he held the record for the most strikeouts per year for 29 years.
Wow.
So he failed a lot, but he also succeeded a lot. So again, we all know that you can't swing for the fences and make contact every time. And so his record stayed, which is even funnier. His record stood for 29 years, and then it was broken by Mickey Mantle.
Ah.
So you have two very predominant, fabulous athletes, elite athletes that hold the records for the most failures. The strikeouts are failures.
Yes.
Up to the plate.
Yes.
And so for 29 years, one of the greatest advocate ball players, no matter how you stand, he's got to be in your top 10, failed for 29 years, held the record.
And and you make such a great point. Jordan, he summed it up very similarly. I didn't know about the 29-year record. I heard about the strikeouts. I didn't know he struck out so much. He held that record too. And Jordan summed it up. He said, because even if you look at basketball players, like 50% is considered amazing. Well, dude, 50% of school is an F. You got to look. Jordan was phenomenal. He was 50% from the field. Well, in the school system, that is a failure.
Exactly.
And Jordan summed it up and he said, I fail, therefore I succeed. And I think people, they're being taught by these false motivation gurus that are saying, you can do it, succeed. No, man, in real life, you're going to fail more than you succeed. And it's the people that are willing to fail more than they succeed who are the most successful. And because no one is a very few people are a brilliant leader and mentor like you, they're being educated wrong, so they quit, or they're afraid to even try because they don't want to fail. But like you said, it's part of the process. And the greatest winners are also the greatest failures. Oddly enough, I didn't know that record, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, I looked that up because I knew he was ahead in the strikeouts, and I didn't know that either. So that's why it impressed me, because that really says a lot. That really sums up that this great athlete had pretty much locked in failing for that long.
That'll totally change your perspective. Like, I knew that he struck out the most. I didn't know he held that'll change your perspective. That's what's required to really be great. You don't think about it. You think about winning is required to be great, but you totally changed my perspective. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, that did me too. And so this has been again, always beautiful talking to you. You expanded my knowledge. You're definitely going to help a lot of people out there. So I will post all Kenny's information so you can reach out to him, Facebook, contact him, definitely tap into his knowledge. If you're in the Indiana area, definitely go by and see him. He's got a wealth of skills in lots of areas. He's the ideal motivational speaker, ideal coach, martial arts, business world, weapons world. So again, humble individual, but if you need someone to guide you, and the beauty of being a good coach and mentor is if he can't do it, he knows someone that can.
Like you.
And so again, it's been a beautiful time, and I hope everyone enjoys this. And again, we'll reach out to us and we'll definitely help guide you a little bit further. So again, thanks, Kenny, for joining me.
Awesome. Thank you, my friend. Always a pleasure.
Peace out. Be you for you.